Herget, and I will be talking to you guys today about manatees. So, I have a joke for you to start. What kind of phone does a mermaid use?
A cell phone.
That's right, good job. Did you know that the creatures once believed to be mermaids were actually manatees?
That's really cool.
So sailors used to mistake them in water, thinking that they had manly or human features. So I had the pleasure of seeing hundreds of manatees when I worked at Crystal River, taking tourist trips to them. I learned a bunch about them during that time, so I'm going to share some of that with you guys today. Where have we seen manatees?
Crystal River?
Yeah, where else? Where do we vacation every year?
Florida?
That's right, yeah. So they've been in Florida for over 1 million years. That's a long time. And we need to protect these guys, right? So today we're going to talk about how awesome manatees are, how we can stay safe in the water for them, and how we can keep our environment clean to keep them around for a lot longer. So what do you guys know about manatees? So this is a manatee right here. What do you know about this guy?
He's a mammal?
Yeah, he's a mammal. Do you know anything, Cameron?
He's gray.
Gray? Yeah, not purple, like the picture? So, what do they eat? They eat seagrass, algae.
And they eat lettuce.
Lettuce, that's right, when we go to SeaWorld to go see them, right? So they're herbivores that swim in saltwater and brackish water and freshwater. So the population today in Florida is 6,300 manatees in all of Florida. That's a lot. So they've increased by 25% in the past 20 years, which is pretty awesome. So manatees migrate, right? They go all over Florida. Migrate means going from one place to another. Do you know why they migrate? They migrate because they can't take water temperatures below 68 degrees. So in the wintertime, they have to tuck away into places like Tarpon Springs. This is where we've been, right? Tarpon Springs. This is an aerial view. So you see all the manatees right there? And then there's the divers right there.
Cool.
Right? So when the water temperature goes below 68, they have to go to warmer locations. And these springs that come up from the Florida's aquifer are always at a 72 degrees. So it's just above where they need to be. And they need to be closer to land, because the closer to land, the warmer the water. So they inhabit rivers, bays, canals, estuaries, and coastal areas, moving freely between fresh, saline, and brackish water. Do you guys know what brackish water is?
Water and salt water.
That's right. Good job, Cameron. So Florida estuaries and Florida or freshwater lakes, springs, and rivers provide extensive beds of seagrass and abundant freshwater aquatic vegetation. So this is their primary food source, right? They need that. So manatees are protected. Do you know what that means? Protected?
Yeah, kept away from the danger.
Yeah.
Safe.
Kept safe, that's right. So for years, manatees were being struck and killed by boats. This is how we can see that right there. So this is a boat strike. See that? What on a boat is making that mark on their back? Do you know?
The motor?
The motor, that's right. So manatees are being struck and killed by boat strikes, human harassment, and environment loss. This is currently being combated by strict no-speed zones, no boat restrictions, habitat fencing, and fertilizer restrictions. There are still things we can do to keep manatee numbers bouncing back. So boating, what can we do to make sure that our boat doesn't hit a manatee?
Look out.
Look
out. Also, what you said, but also like not really near like land, because manatees like that area.
Okay. So they have the signs, right? The manatee signs. So those are like the no speed zones. So these have been posted all over the state of Florida. These manatee speed zones, low speed or no wake zones. And it has a big sign that says manatee protected area, right?
Yeah.
So that means that we can't go fast, because then our prop or the motor will hit a manatee. So the prop strikes the manatee going at high speeds and slices their back, as we saw in the picture. Since they breathe air, they're constantly at the surface, so the risk is really high because they're mammals, they have to breathe air, right? The other part is loss of habitat. Waterway is the biggest or the highest populated area for residential development and commercial use. So people live on the water, right? That's where people want to live.
Mhm.
So when buildings are built, they lose their grazing areas, which is like grass feeding areas where they go and graze. The largest is the Indian River, which is over on the east coast of Florida, where the grass is dying from oversaturation of nutrients from water runoff. Do you guys know what runoff is? So runoff is when we fertilize our grass, or we drive our cars, or anything gets in the road, it rains, and then it spills into our waterways and kills everything that's in the water. So that contributes to habitat loss and manatee nesting areas and main grazing areas because it kills the seagrass. So environment intrusion, so sewage, manure, fertilizer runoff that we just talked about, which creates large algae blooms, and which is the gross green algae that sits on the surface. And then when manatees eat it, it actually makes it's toxic, and so it makes them really sick and they die, especially the babies because they're more susceptible to it. So human harassment, what does it mean to harass somebody? So it means to bug them, right? Annoy them, scare them, chase them off. So this is a large point of intrusion because this chases the animals into colder water. So like we said earlier, manatees can't go below 68 degrees. And if we're at Three Sisters here, where they have to be in the 72-degree water, and then all the humans are chasing them around, it chases them into colder water, and then they die of hypothermia. So I witnessed a lot of this in Crystal River, and since you guys they've put up a lot of structure penning manatees in, right? There's no human can go into those big pens. So the blue-green algae, the cyanobacteria, and red tide are natural phenomenons, but these are exacerbated by fertilizer and phosphorus runoff. So basically our fertilizers add to the red tide and all these different kinds of algae growths and bacteria. So over-fertilization on lawns, landscaping, weed killers, and then when it gets rained on, like I said, it gets flushed right into our waterways, especially in the waterfront areas. So heavy restrictions have been put on these fertilizers, especially in the monsoon season when we have the heavy rains, which is in summertime, so that all of this runoff doesn't go into the water. So what are some ways that we can help the manatees? Do you guys know any ways that we can help manatees?
Plant more seagrass.
Plant seagrass, that's great. So who do we hire to plant seagrass?
I don't know.
So it would be the government, right? So we can actually donate money, or not the government, but different charities. And where do we go that has a huge manatee rehabilitation center?
SeaWorld.
SeaWorld, exactly right. So when we pay our admission to SeaWorld, they actually turn around and put this money back into the manatees. Another thing that we can do is we can put what's called a prop guard on the back of our engine. And it's this big piece of plastic that goes around the prop, which is the smitting piece, the piece that cuts the manatee's back. And instead of it striking them and slicing them, they would only hit the piece of plastic.
Would that hurt them?
It would still hurt them, but it wouldn't slice them as deep. So it would still hurt, but it wouldn't be as bad. The only thing is that the large ships, like the big tankers and stuff, that you can't put a prop guard on there because they're so big. So that hasn't been really solved yet. But they do have to adhere to speed zones, those big protected manatee speed zones. Fertilizer is probably our biggest concern when it comes to habitat loss. So really restricting our fertilizer use or using organic fertilizers that don't contribute to the big algae problem that we have in Florida would be good. And then there are lots of websites and foundations that we can donate money to help support manatees. It supports their research, rehab, and this is also, we just do our daily part to protect the manatees, which means when we see them at the beach, we don't touch them and we don't chase them, right? So, I want to thank you guys for being such a good audience. We had so much fun talking about manatees. Can you tell me something that you learned? Olivia?
They could put something on them.
Yeah, Cameron.
Plant
Plant seagrass. Yeah, very good. So we talked about boating and boating precautions, how to be safe, how to protect their habitat, how to protect their environment, and what we can do to support them, right? So I think you can use this information whenever we go out on our boat, right? When we go out on our boat and to protect these animals. So that's my speech.
Thank you.